All right, we should be back in the building on this Thursday morning. Y'all know what to do. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can see me. We're about to get into it. We've got an amazing show for y'all. As you see in the title, we have a very, very, very special guest returning to the show. I'm excited about that. That's right. Garland Favorito is going to be back in the building after his shocking press conference he had yesterday. So not only was he involved in the state elections board meeting that took place a couple of weeks ago, or last week actually, but he had his own press conference where he's going to expose and discuss everything that's been happening here in Fulton County. A lot of what we've been speculating about, the evidence that we've been showing here in the channel, is going to be backed up by a man who is actually involved in breaking this entire situation when it comes to the 2020 election and beyond. So we're going to be talking with Garland Favorito today. Excited about that. We've also got some breaking news when it comes to Fani Willis. We're going to be talking about the elections officials that were involved in the entire FBI raid. They're still upset. I know. They won't let it go. They want us to let it go. They won't let it go now. Shoes on the other foot. We got Don Lemon as well. We'll get into it. But before I do, we got to say what's up to the people. Shout out to everyone who's in the building. Thank y'all so much for being here and being the reason this show is the great place that it is. Wouldn't be the same without y'all. Of course, we got my beautiful, awesome, amazing Amy E is in the building. You know what she is. Amazing. Always doing what she does and supporting the show. A lot of what you see during the show, the production of the show, Amy has a major hand in that. So thank you so much, Amy, for the support and for being here as well and for being amazing. We've got Les Cleaver, one of the hardest working guys I know, is in the building. We got Taco Tuesday is in here. Virginia Wiley's up in the chat as well. So good to see so many of y'all. And I'm excited that you guys are here because it's going to be a great one. I'm excited about this exclusive interview we've got. Garland's first interview he's doing since he uncovered all of the information we're going to be talking about during today's show. But before we get into it, I do ask you guys one major favor, and that's that you like the video on your way in. That's not a major favor because it's free. It takes less than a second to do. And I know many of you guys have already done that already, but it really helps the show continue to grow. Lets the algorithm know that y'all are enjoying the show, and it shares the video, the channel, and this live stream with more people. So if you haven't yet, please take the time to do that. Thank you to the nearly 600 of you that have liked the video so far. I appreciate it, and it helps us out a lot. So thank you. If you're feeling extra generous, you can share the video as well. Click the share button. It's got an arrow that's curved pointing to the right. That'll allow you to share the video to any social media platform that you're on. You can even share it via text message as well. You can share it to your group chat or into someone individually. And then last but not least, I will be reading super chats as we go throughout the show. So thank you to everyone that goes the extra mile and sends in super chats. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into it because as I mentioned, we've got an interview we're doing today. We've got a lot to cover, a lot of breaking news with what's going on here in Fulton County. So with that being said, we have heard a lot from Fulton County election officials, especially when it comes to the FBI raid here in Fulton County over the 2020 election. Now, we've looked into the affidavit for the search warrant done by the FBI, and we saw there was, as someone who's not an attorney, as someone who's not a judge, and just has a basic level of common sense, you could see that there was probable cause there. Based on what we all saw and experienced being here in Fulton County, based on what you guys have communicated, based on what's been communicated by numerous others, including the person we're going to be interviewing shortly, Garland Favorito, we know that there was a case there. And the FBI had a reason for going into Fulton County election offices and looking at these over 700 boxes of ballots. Now, what they're going to find is going to be interesting because we've heard so much from both sides. From one side, seeming like they're nervous about the FBI taking these over and that the FBI might tamper with them. From the other side, showing that there is a reason we're looking into this. So we're actually going to hear from Senator Warnock. I know how many of y'all feel about him. He's actually going to speak with an election official about how this whole thing was handled. And he's going to call out the attorney general as well, which is wild to me. I don't know why he thinks he has a place to do that because we've already seen the affidavit. Either way, check it out here from 11 Alive News, and then we'll discuss it here on the channel. Check it out.
Now to Washington, D.C. and to Capitol Hill, where Fulton County Commissioner Mo Ivory, who we should note has recently launched a campaign for Fulton County Commission chairperson, was on the Hill today just moments ago. This is all happening within the last half an hour or so, talking with and answering questions from U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, about the recent FBI raid of a Fulton County election facility. Here is some of their conversation.
What did they tell you
thing.
that they were doing? How did they explain their presence
Come on, man.
in Fulton County?
There was very little conversation. They told us to step back. They were here to get everything related to 2020, and that they would go in and get what they needed, and there was very little conversation.
Right. Now, this was an FBI raid, correct?
Correct.
And we all saw it, but I just want to establish that for the record. This is a raid by the FBI.
Yes.
But
Correct.
Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was on the scene.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie, I thought that was strange as well. I could see possibly why she was there. We talked about Maduro and some conspiracy theories behind that. The former president of Venezuela is in custody in New York, and maybe he was giving some information to the FBI, to the director of national intelligence, about how the elections were done in 2020, and that's why she was there, because maybe she was looking for something specifically mentioned by Maduro. We won't know. I thought it was strange, though, that Tulsi Gabbard was there as well. So I'll give Senator Warnock that one.
Do you know what she was doing there? You saw her yourself.
Yes, I did.
Do you know what she was doing there?
I don't know why she was there.
Okay. Did the
It's none of your
FBI
business.
tell you where they were taking the ballots or what they were going to do with them?
No.
Since the raid, have you
None of your
received
business.
any information about how the ballots are being handled or what measures are in place to ensure that no one is tampering with those ballots?
No.
What types of sensitive voter data were contained in the boxes of ballots and other materials taken by the FBI?
The materials included were the actual ballots, recap sheets, results tapes, and absentee ballot envelopes that contained personally identifiable information.
Right. As
So they want to
a
redact it.
commissioner, as a servant of the people of Fulton County, are you concerned about what the administration will do with such sensitive data from Fulton County voters?
Yes.
Thank you so very much for your testimony. I have demanded an explanation from Pam Bondi about this raid.
I'm sorry. I gotta keep it together. Bro, who are you? Shout out to Raphael Warnock. He's demanded Pam Bondi do what? We already saw the affidavit, Senator Warnock. We know exactly why they went there. What are you going at Pam Bondi for? We know why they were there. It's laid out clearly. Missing ballots, tabulator tape issues, duplicate ballots, and we could go on and on and on and on. So he's demanding Pam Bondi give him an answer. This is absolutely hilarious. Now, we're going to be talking about this later. We already know there's a motion in place from Fulton County, and specifically Rob Pitts, that the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Rob Pitts, filed a motion because he wants the ballots back so they can make sure that the FBI gets them in the way that he wants to get them. We're going to discuss the problem with that moving forward, but it's Rob Pitts. It's none of your business. It's not your job. Your job is to comply by the search warrant, which you did, and you don't get to file a motion saying you want them back because they're not your ballots. But anyway, this is hilarious that Raphael Warnock thinks he's demanding an answer from the Attorney General. Bro, get out of here.
Yes.
Thank you so very much for your testimony.
It's hilarious.
I have demanded an explanation from Pam Bondi about this raid. So far, I have not heard back from her. She has not offered one. But we'll keep demanding answers because if we don't stand up now, they won't stop with Fulton County. We saw this in Minneapolis, Minnesota, when Attorney General Bondi attempted to seize the state voters' roll in exchange for the withdrawal of ICE agents. They literally said, you want ICE out of your community? Hand over your voter rolls. Hand over your voter rolls.
Seems like a fair deal.
If you want to end the occupation of your city. And I call it that because there's 600 police officers, over 3,000 federal agents.
Yeah, but the problem with that, we've seen on this channel, we've covered it. The problem with that is the police officers aren't doing their job, which is why ICE had to step in the first place. And of course, people like Senator Warnock and even other politicians, and sometimes even the president of the United States, are going to ignore basic facts like, oh, I don't know, maybe illegal immigrants or illegal. Let's not even go illegal immigrants. Let's go illegal criminals in the Minneapolis area have been committing a lot of crimes. There are some heinous illegal criminals in that area that were arrested. Child predators. You've got violent criminals that were arrested and then released back into the streets without ICE being involved, without Department of Homeland Security being able to get those criminals out of the country. That's really the problem. So yeah, that's nice. You got all these officers, but they aren't doing anything. And they're definitely not working with ICE or the Department of Homeland Security. Come on, man.
Call it that because there are 600 police officers, over 3,000 federal agents. This is their project. They are already trying to cast doubt on the 2026 elections. Commissioner Ivory, what keeps you up at night?
Who wrote this
when you think about the midterm elections, when you think about the seizing of voter rolls or voter records in Fulton County, a ransom note from the Attorney General to the people of Minneapolis, does that bother you at all as you think about the midterm elections?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is a preview of what could happen nationally, which is attempted takeovers from multiple angles. I worry about the election workers who are everyday people coming to work to support their families and feel intimidated just going to work every day. The Fulton County Republican Party attempted to nominate 2 known election deniers to our Board of Registrations and Elections as a part of this. It's a complete movement. So what keeps me up at night is knowing that we in Fulton County are able and have secure, fair, and free elections. But voter suppression is a tactic that keeps people at home. And we have to fight to make sure that people know that their vote is important and that they have the right to exercise it.
No. Fulton County, stand up. People across the nation who have seen issues in their own counties, stand up and speak against this, because y'all have said it in the comments to the tune of thousands of comments of y'all saying, no, the reason we don't trust elections is because of the BS that happened in 2020 and before our very eyes, and even in the affidavit, and even admittedly so by the attorney for the Board of Elections, said that, oh yeah, we messed up. There were over 300,000 votes that weren't verified. That is the reason we don't trust the system, not because, oh, well, we feel like our vote doesn't count, because then the president's just going to step in and he's going to say, oh, the votes weren't right because the votes weren't right. No, it's because we've seen a recount, we've seen an audit, we've seen another recount, and you guys are pretending like it didn't happen and that there wasn't a discrepancy in the counts of votes. So that's why we feel like our vote doesn't count, not because you guys messed up. Anyway, let's keep it going.
To proceedings from Capitol Hill between U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, and Fulton County Commissioner Mo Ivory, who recently launched a campaign for Fulton County Commission chair. They were discussing the recent FBI search warrant that was executed in the Fulton County election hub. We should point out the administration's perspective on this as well. For as much as we understand it right now, the Department of Justice and the FBI have been reasonably tight-lipped about the search warrant and about the details of the investigation behind it. The president, during the State of the Union address last night, said this, and I'm going to quote here from a transcript of his remarks. "The cheating is rampant in our elections. It is rampant. It's very simple. All voters must show voter ID." And the president went on to discuss other election-related topics in this section of his speech.
Yeah, and we got to hear that as well. But again, guys, the denial by Fulton County officials is really frustrating, to be honest. It's like they're ignoring what we're saying and not listening to us. The only people using this talking point that I have seen throughout the large majority of Fulton County are these officials. They're the ones saying that, oh man, we can't have this happen because there's a whole movement going against the voters. The voters don't believe. And I've seen so many of y'all, and I've said myself as a resident of Fulton County, that we have an issue with the way these elections were run, which is why we're here in the first place. We're not scared of the FBI. We're not scared of Tulsi Gabbard, although it's weird looking into what happened during the 2020 election, because a lot of the things we saw and a lot of things we continue to see and are going to hear are messed up. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And you guys are deflecting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments in the chat. Man, when are they going to stop pretending like everything's okay? It's just hilarious how they can say at one point, oh, well, just look past it. Pretend like nothing happened. We fixed it. We made improvements. There's nothing to see there. But then also be worried about us going and looking and finding out what actually happened during the 2020 election. If it wasn't a big deal and if everything worked out and if there was count after count after count done and it turned out Brad Raffensperger did his job and everything's good, then what's the problem? Make it make sense. Thank you to everyone who's in here. Make sure y'all like the video on your way in. We got over 7,000 of y'all in here. I added a 0, but it's okay. We're going to speak it into existence. Make sure y'all like the video if you haven't yet. Not sure how I found you, but so glad I did. Always an awesome job report. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that. The fact that they keep pushing and expecting to get what they want speaks volumes. I don't understand it. I do not understand it. I don't get why they want us to pretend like we should just close our eyes and not look at what happened in 2020 and just say, hey, you know, we're doing better now, which they still aren't doing better now, because we just heard during the Georgia State Elections Board meeting that there are still over 200 plus people that were allegedly born in the year 1900 that are registered to vote. Now, what they would say was, oh, it's a clerical error. Oh, you know, it's not a big deal because those 200 votes, they aren't really going to affect anything. But as we heard from Janelle King, yes, you might say that, but there are so many factors that come into play on the count on the local level, because if you have those 200 votes, they could move, depending on what county you're in, they could move things to the left or right significantly. So again, as y'all are saying in the chat, yep, this is not just about Fulton, it's the whole state. Absolutely. And we've talked about it at length here, and we've got some exciting interviews and discussions that we're going to have on this channel as well. So make sure y'all stay tuned, because we got a lot to talk about, because they have used lawfare to do what they want. Voter suppression, an example needs to be made here. I agree. The conspiracy was huge. Just yesterday, I learned that Fannie colluded with the J. Oh, just yesterday. You must be new here, because we've been talking about it for what seems like 2 years. When did Young Thug? Has it been 2 years since Young Thug got out? I think it's been a year and some change. We have been talking about this since the YSL trial went on. So stay tuned, because we got a lot. We'll keep you guys up to date on what's going on here in Fulton County. And we're actually going to talk about Fani Willis and J6 as well. Shout out to Jason, man, showing love with the 15 bomb. What does he say? He says, I want the signatures on those 140K absentee ballots from Fulton Verified. Thank you for the 15 bomb, Jason, but good luck with that. I think we'll see somebody in jail before that happens. Which might be the case, to be honest, because again, we've heard from Ann, and I need to get her name right. Ann SB. Is it Brumbaugh? Ann Brumbaugh. I believe her name is. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Anyway, we heard from her that, yeah, sorry, those 300,000 votes, they weren't verified. Sorry, guys. But we're doing better now. We've made improvements, so it's okay. Went from 114 to 116. Are you kidding me? It gets worse. It gets worse. This is that one county, and they concede there are still problems throughout, and their software is tainted. We've talked about it here. Yep. We've talked about that. And we even talked to Garland about it. He said those were just the 9 errors that I found were just in the one software. He said there's numerous errors throughout the software. And he even saw when they first started, using this system or planned on implementing this system into Fulton County, he saw the issues before they even happened. It was like, you guys, I don't think this is a good idea. We probably should go another direction. And of course, here we are. Seems like it was all a setup from the beginning. Either way, we're going to have Garland back on the show here shortly. So I'm super excited about this. Thank you to everybody who's in the building. Make sure if you guys have questions for Garland, make sure you put them in the chat and we'll actually capture a couple of them as well. And then we should be able to get to a question and answer segment for Garland. So make sure y'all, any questions that you have for Garland, if you watched the last interview, make sure you ask them because he had a huge press conference yesterday that we're going to talk about here shortly. But let's go ahead and get into our next topic because many of you actually mentioned it here in the chat with what's going on with Fani Willis, and something that we have been discussing and I predicted and even showed evidence of on this channel is turning out, it looks like it's true. And let's get into it. Fani Willis, as I've mentioned on this channel, really put a target on her back by going through with this indictment on the election interference case against the president of the United States. And not only because there wasn't anything there. I mean, if she saw the facts, as she said in an interview, she said she saw the facts, she looked at the facts, and she thought her job as a district attorney, she felt like a criminal being the president of the United States, and his co-conspirators came into her county, committed crimes, and she needed to charge it. Okay, fine. If that's where it stops, that's fine. But what we saw and what we talked about on this channel is that there was a wealth of evidence that Fani Willis was working with the White House, the current administration at the time, President Biden, Kamala Harris specifically, to bring an indictment against the president of the United States, which makes it a whole nother issue. Not only Fani Willis, but the mayor of Atlanta was mentioned in that, and Nathan Wade, of course, also admitted, and it was shown that he made several calls to the White House, which he shrugged off and said, oh, it's just because we were working on this case and I was trying to get evidence and just doing my job. Well, now we have more information about Fani's possible involvement in what went on during this election interference case and what led up to that. And she possibly, it's looking like she might be caught and did collude with the White House to bring these charges. Check out this article here. They say the Fani files. Georgia prosecutor plotted Trump case closely with the Biden Department of Justice. We've got some memos that might prove that. Just the News and America's first legal access to over 8,000 pages of documents after extensive open records litigation. Again, if you have an open records request here in Fulton County, we've seen with the Ashley Merchant and the Merchant Law Firm, we've seen with Judicial Watch, you have to have an attorney if you want an open records request to go through. I've had an open records request for months now and haven't heard anything back other than, oh, we've just had a high volume of requests. Sorry. It's the way it goes here in Fulton County, and it's unfortunate, but thankfully now we're at a place to where these documents are starting to come out. The memos include revelations on how Joe Biden waived Trump's executive privilege specifically to aid Georgia prosecutors, specifically Fani Willis. Let's talk about it. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis coordinated extensively with the Biden Justice Department and White House, as well as Democrats on the House J6 Investigative Committee as she built a failed criminal case against President Donald Trump and his allies related to their challenge of Georgia's 2020 election results, according to a trove of internal communications obtained by Just News. And we're going to talk about it. The memos show that President Joe Biden's top White House lawyer personally opened the door for Fani Willis, the prosecutor, to interview the Trump administration officials by waiving claims of executive privilege. That federal prosecutors waived certain rights to allow the interviews to proceed before a state grand jury, and that Willis's team spoke glowingly of the congressional efforts to expose Trump's involvement in the disputed election. Basically, a phone call that he made to Brad Raffensperger saying, hey, man, where did these nearly 18,000, 17,000 votes come from overnight? I feel like I potentially could have won Georgia, or at least it was close. You need to find those votes because I don't know how this happened. And that's why we are where we are now. And that's why the case was brought. One of the main reasons, because Fani Willis felt like that was election interference, along with potentially the then president of the United States and possibly the vice president. The Just the News, alongside the nonprofit public interest law firm America First Legal, sued Fani Willis for the records, similar to what the merchant law firm did and Judicial Watch. Under Georgia's open records law, Fani Willis, a longtime Trump nemesis, sought to hide many of the records with claims of legal privilege during a prolonged legal fight. In a reaction to the lawsuit, Willis's office this week dropped all privilege claims and released all the documents without any redactions, providing to Just the News and the public more information that it did to congressional Republican on the House Judiciary Committee. These documents reveal that the Biden administration and the January 6th committee were much more involved in the district attorney Fani Willis's prosecution of President Trump than was previously believed. We believed it. We knew it. We saw the evidence. It wasn't that hard to figure out. Now we actually have the documents. AFL was happy to represent Just the News to get Americans this new information, and Will S., an attorney at America First Legal, said. The documents show a cozy relationship between the Biden administration and Willis's staff, one that included a meeting between her outside special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, and the Biden White House. We know about this. And Nathan Wade said it wasn't a big deal. It was just a couple of phone calls. Wade, who admitted to a personal relationship with Fani Willis outside the office, billed Fulton County $2,000 for an interview with the DC White House on November 18th of 2022. Just as Willis's probe, Fani Willis, I'll say, was accelerating, according to the new records Willis was forced to disclose. There is no further explanation in the documents for that interaction, and Fulton County told Just the News and its lawyers at AFL that Wade did not keep any records of what happened at that meeting. Of course not. Calls to Willis for comment were not returned by publication time, of course, and I don't think she'll say anything anytime soon. She has got to be worried. Guys, I've been saying this from the beginning since we started covering this. I think Fani Willis is going to be the one that's the scapegoat in all of this. Because we could look at Kamala Harris, we could look at President Joe Biden, we could look at even Brad Raffensperger. I think Fani Willis, unfortunately for her, is going to be the one that's going to end up paying for all of this. And it'll be interesting to see how this goes down. The new memos also show that the Biden White House counsel office gave Willis's prosecution team a major gift by waiving Trump's ability to claim executive privilege and to block former administration officials from testifying. Executive privilege is the implied authority of the United States president to withhold information that the executive branch possesses from Congress or the judiciary on grounds that the president is entitled to confidential advice before making decisions. It is a long-standing American tradition, and the secrecy of the presidential communications was first referenced from Chief Justice John Marshall in the landmark case Marbury versus Madison. Ironically, President Obama and his attorney Eric Holder asserted the same privilege during investigations of the botched Fast and Furious gun running scheme. The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press noted that when a president invokes executive privilege, it may be among the most difficult walls to penetrate because of the number of potential leaks with access to the White House documents is limited and closely monitored. So essentially, Fani Willis might not have been able to get access to that information, and maybe she shouldn't have been able to get access to the information that she used to bring this indictment forward. If that's the case, this going to get ugly here in a minute. So with that being said, in some instances, reporting has simply been prevented from reporting on an important issue because the blockade had worked. Biden, however, believed that the extraordinary events surrounding the insurrection on January 6th in the state capitol warranted waiving his historical understanding of the privacy of the presidential communications, the news memos show. In a letter to Fulton County prosecutors on September 2022, Biden's special counsel, Richard Sauber, informed Willis's deputy, Wakeford, that the White House would not invoke executive privilege for the testimony of former Trump White House officials before the Georgia grand jury. This could be bad for Fani Willis. These events threatened not only the safety of Congress and others present at the Capitol, but also the principles of democracy enshrined in our history and our Constitution, Sauber wrote. which I believe that's one of the ways we were able to find out who was there during the January 6th entire situation. Again, don't quote me on that. In light of these unique circumstances, President Biden has determined, as he did with respect to the congressional investigation of these events, that an assertion of executive privilege is not in the public interest with respect to the efforts to thwart the orderly transition of power under our Constitution, the special counsel wrote. This waiver would apply to any events in the White House on or about January 6th, the Justice Department efforts to investigate allegations of fraud in the 2020 election, and any effort to alter valid 2020 election results or obstruct the transfer of power. Why would you need to go through all of this if there was nothing going on? That is crazy. You can read the Biden White House letter below, and we're going to get into that in another video. But it gets wild here, guys. It has been known for years that Biden waived Trump's executive privilege for the congressional inquiry and the federal prosecution of Trump, led by special counsel Jack Smith, who Fani Willis allegedly worked closely with. But the Georgia memo appears to be the first document to show how Biden extended that waiver in coordination with the prosecution at a state level. Ooh. This is crazy. Willis announced in August of 2023 that she had indicted Trump and allies on racketeering, her favorite charge, as we know, conspiracy, and other charges after more than 2 years long investigation into the alleged 2020 election interference in that state, in the state of Georgia. Under Fani Willis, Georgia became the first state to do so, followed later by fellow Democrat prosecutors in Arizona and Wisconsin, who also went after Trump's allies, which we'll have to look into Arizona and Wisconsin coming up soon as well. 18 other people, including Trump's former attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and former White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, were also indicted in Georgia, accused of aiding Trump in a bid to change the outcome of the state's 2020 election. You can read the indictment here, which we've been through at length on this channel. So again, there's so much more we could go through here, and I might have to make this into separate videos, but I'll finish this section for you. And I want to know what you guys think about this, specifically when it comes to Fani Willis and her working with the White House on this. Because if that is the case, there's going to be a whole lot of legal issues that Fani Willis is going to have to answer as to her obtaining certain information, using certain information, how she was working with, and the conversation she was having with the White House. Because if this was released and if this letter was stated, there would have had to been some communication there. And if she said Nathan Wade was handling all of that, then we have questions that need to be answered by Nathan Wade. Now, we were supposed to hear from Nathan Wade at the Senate Special Committee this last 2 Fridays ago, but he didn't show up because he needs time to get counsel, and there's a whole issue there. So we might not hear from Nathan Wade for another 30, 60, who knows, 90 days in that case. So with that being said, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Nathan Wade, hey, this might be your chance, man. This might be your way to get out of it, because he's already taken the fall from Fani Willis in the first place. But lastly, it said the state prosecution came days after Jack Smith filed a similar federal indictment in Washington, D.C. Trump and the other defendants charged in this indictment refused to accept that Trump lost. Okay. And they knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump. Willis, this is Fani Willis, and what she said, told a news conference at the time, matching a narrative that the Biden White House, congressional Democrats, and Jack Smith also echoed. Trump's legal team portrayed the state indictment as a pile-on and alleged that Willis was a part of a political conspiracy to defame Trump and drain his resources as he was running again to return to the White House in 2024. Eventually, the president would prevail in getting Willis removed from the case. I mean, Fani Willis did have herself. I don't know. She might still be on the case if she hadn't had her issues with Nathan Wade. And the charges were dismissed, of course. The documents show that Fulton County prosecutors working for Willis received significant assistance from the Biden administration beyond the waiver of executive privilege, in what could legally only be considered a boost to her target of Trump and his allies. And there's more here we're going to get into in another video. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments in the chat. I don't know if Fani Willis has heard of this yet. She watches the channel. I 1000% know that for certain. So it'll be interesting to see her thoughts. Maybe she'll leave a comment. I would be nervous with this coming out, because if that is the case, then who was making that communication? Who was that communication being relayed to? What was the back and forth? What was being discussed? How were they helping in those instances? Because if Joe Biden said, hey, whatever you guys need, I got you. That's gonna be an issue for Fannie Willis moving forward. Let me know what you guys think in the comments in the chat. Man, guys. We didn't even get into the J6 situation, which I actually need to, let me do this. I need to make sure I grab this because I kind of want to read this letter from the White House. And it came from Richard Sauber. I don't know. But I want to read this letter to you, and I might save this for another video. But what they say in this letter is actually very interesting. Let me see what you guys have to say. And we should have Garland in here soon. So y'all make sure you get ready for that. Get your questions ready if you have them as well. And we'll be capturing some of those questions as we go throughout this segment. You don't even need to have the ballots or see the ballots to know what the ratios of the missing ballots were. Yes, the ratios of the missing ballots in DNA exposing the cheat. No one was charged for January. No one was charged. J6 was charged with insurrection because they could not charge them with that. Cheating Fulton County dictates all of Georgia. They are a cluster of crooks. Oh, man, dang. Taking shots at Fulton County. Well, I mean, it might be well-founded, and we're actually going to talk about that here shortly. So let me double check and make sure we're good. I believe we've got my guy Garland in here. Let me double check and see. Okay, Garland gave me a thumbs up, so I think we've got him in here. Let me double check.
Yes, indeed.
Oh,
great to be back with you, Eric.
All right, let's go ahead and get him on the screen. Y'all give a round of applause to the honorable Garland Favorito. Man, I appreciate you so much for coming back into the building. I had a great segment the last time you were here, and it's been great talking with you.
It's good to be with you, Eric. We appreciate I mean, you got a great audience too. We really appreciate all the audience that's out there. They got our backs.
Oh yeah, and they were showing you some major support and love as well after the last time you were on the show. Really wanting to support and praise you for the work you've been putting in, not just in the last couple of years, but since 2020 happened and even before all of that, which I know we're going to get into shortly.
Yeah, it's been a long battle, but we're finally starting to win now. It's getting fun.
Yeah, I love to see it. And let's go ahead and talk about it. I know you had a press conference yesterday, which was absolutely amazing. So much good information, specifically when it comes to your battles that you faced here in Fulton County, just trying to get the truth. So where would you like to start with what you talked about during the press conference and some of the battles you've had to face here, just getting information from Fulton County?
Well, we had, thanks for asking. We had 3 topics yesterday. That the one that I had filed a state election board complaint, which is fascinating because they kept telling me, replying to open records requests, that they didn't have the ballots that the FBI seized. So that's hilarious. Mm-hmm. And then the other issue is they filed this complaint to try to prevent the FBI from taking the ballots and not looking at them, and which is kind of hilarious. And I predicted that they would. Well, first of all, they don't have standing to do that. Mm-hmm. And I thought that the hearing would be canceled. Pretty good chance because it was an evidentiary hearing. You can't really have an evidentiary hearing for people who don't have standing, particularly if they're possibly the criminals who the FBI is investigating. So sure enough, this morning, the judge canceled the hearing for tomorrow.
That's amazing.
So, and they said he's sending them to mediation. He should have just dismissed the case. But that was the other thing. And then we walked through the FBI search warrant evidence that because they're claiming they didn't have probable cause. And we walked through some of the probable cause that they do have, based on publicly available information.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like, I mean, anybody could have almost any person out there who was familiar with what was going on could have created that affidavit with probable cause in it. So I guess wherever you would like to start on those three things, that's what we covered yesterday. And by the way, I'm sorry, before I stop, the press conference is out there on the voterga.org events tab, so anybody who's free to watch it. I think it's pretty fascinating.
Yes, and we dropped the link to voterga.org in the chat, and we've also got it in the description as well. You just go to the events tab and you'll be able to find everything there. Specifically talking about the hiding ballot situation, because again, as you said, I've talked about it at length here. We actually went through the affidavit for the search warrant step by step, and we saw to me, the three major issues: the missing ballots, the duplicated ballots, and the tabulators, right? And it was so interesting to me to see that you're saying, and what your lawsuit, I believe, showed, was that Fulton County was hiding those ballots from you for multiple years.
Oh, right. So, I mean, if you want to go all the way back to the beginning, I'm trying to remember what we talked about. There's so much water on the dam in the last week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can't remember exactly what we discussed on the show last week. But yeah. So if you want to go back all the way to the beginning, we filed that case for the ballots in December 23 of 2020, and the reason we filed it was several reasons. One is, I was there at the hand count audit when they found the counterfeit ballot. Susie Boyles found the ballot. I think we may have talked about that last week.
Yes.
But they, it's obvious they were counterfeit because they were mail-in ballots, and they're trying to say that they weren't mail-in ballots, but they were mail-in ballots, and they were not folded from being mailed. They were not written with a writing instrument. It looked like they were toner copied, and they were not on the correct paper stock, and they were voted the same way down ballot for dozens of a row. So they were obvious counterfeits. And then, we had the State Farm Arena video. You can see some double scanning on that. So we filed the lawsuit on December 23rd of 2020. And that was what we call an equal protection and due process. That means if they are not conducting elections properly, that's a violation of our federal and state constitutional due process. And if they injected counterfeit ballots, then it's an equal protection violation because it's diluting our votes. So that was the basis of our claim. And the judge we got an order to preserve the ballots and an order to unseal the ballots in 2021. So we got the order to preserve. We went to court on January 6th of 2021 of all dates, when everything was going on up in D.C. and we were in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Fulton County said they wanted to go home. We had to stop the it was a remote hearing, and we had to stop the hearing for them to go home because they were in the office and they were afraid that they were going to be attacked.
Wow.
But we got the preservation order the next day, and then in May we got the order to unseal and then I guess it was September, October. Now the judge said that we didn't have standing. We had to take that to the Supreme Court. We won, and Georgia Supreme Court came back. They said, yeah, you got standing. That reactivated the preservation order and the unseal order. So we should have been able to open discovery right then, but then they switched the case to another judge, and we had to file a motion to recuse because we knew this judge was bad.
Oh man!
Based on his previous handling of the David Perdue case and making these snide remarks and extrajudicial commentary in ruling against him. So anyway, that's kind of the background of how we got all the way up to the search warrant. But along the way, and what we talked about yesterday in the press conference was that I filed 4 open records requests for the ballot. So our attorney back in 2024 said, okay, well, the order to unseal is back, and there's only a 2-year limit on sealing the ballot. See, this is the other thing that people don't understand, and that Fulton County is trying to claim, well, the ballots are sealed forever. by 21-500. It's a certain Georgia statute.
Right.
And they said, but if you read the statute, and we showed this in the video yesterday, if you read the statute, it says that they're only sealed for 2 years.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So my attorney says, hey, it's been 2 years. Why don't you file an open records request for the ballots while we're waiting for this judge who's not going to do anything? So I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So I filed these 2 open records requests, and the Board of Elections said, we don't have any responsive records. So that means that they didn't have the ballots. And I asked for the same ballots that the FBI seized on January 28th. At least we're told that they seized them. I think that they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all the Fulton County officials says that the FBI's got the ballots now. So we'll see. I think they do. And they just lied to me all along. But
Absolutely.
at the same time, at the same time, the clerk. So I said, okay, I filed it against the clerk because the BOE, they play this shell game. They said, we can't give you the ballots. The clerk's got them. So, okay, so but they didn't say that. They just said they didn't have any ballots. So I filed against the clerk. And then we've come to find out they're not in the open records request portal. So my wife and I had to hand deliver the open records request to the clerk's office and get it signed. And then I emailed them a copy the next day. And they said, well, we don't have the ballots, we either. They said, there's no responsive records. And they say, well, you requested them, and we requested them in a 600 DPI format so that we could detect counterfeits. Mm-hmm. And which is standard copier. Every standard copy is going to copy in 600 DPI. And they said, well, we don't have the records in the requested format. Well, that's not the law. The open records request law is they have to copy the records. If you ask for a copy of their records, they have to copy the records. So if they had a standard copy, the standard copy would have been in the format that we requested. But basically, they refused to even copy the records that they had. So that was 2024. And then we worked for 4 years because of this. They kept saying this. And we got this law passed in 2020 that effective in 2025. It was SB 189 was the bill number. And that made ballots public record. It took us 4 years. And what that says is, regardless of what this statute 21-500 says, right? Because you can try to interpret this, we want to make it now crystal clear for you. I call it the Fulton County ballot law. And they say, we will make it crystal clear that you, as the superintendent, had to get the ballots from the clerk if there's any question. And we don't care what 21-500 says, you've got to deliver the ballots to an open records requester. Mm-hmm. And so they made it crystal clear. And every county agrees that that's what the law says, except for Fulton County. And Fulton, so I sent the open records request again for 2 more times, sent it to the clerk. The clerk said, no responsive records. And by the way, the law doesn't apply to us anyway. So we said, okay, well, then we'll send it to the Board of Elections. And the Board of Elections says, no responsive records. And now they were required to go get the records. So they basically lied, and really effectively they lied 4 times, but there is one, that particular one is particularly egregious because the code explicitly orders them to go get the ballots, and they refuse to do it. So I filed this state election board complaint. We've learned never to file a claim against Fulton County in a Fulton County court system. Yeah, because they're always going to rule. Yeah. That's one of the dumbest things I've done. But we learned big time that we shouldn't have done that. So anyway, so I filed a state election board complaint because now we've got these. It's been, as you know, it's been reconfigured. Yes, the state election boards, and we got some really top-notch. They're great heroines on there. Yeah, yes, patriots who are. They are all about election integrity. So hopefully that case will come up next month. Yes. And we will, Fulton County is going to have some more explaining to do in March. So that's kind of the backstory of that election board case that I filed.
So with that new law, it seems like, we've heard rumors from sources in DC that criminal charges may be a result of what happened during this FBI raid into Fulton County. And now with that new law, I mean, it seems like there may be some issues with the clerk potentially being held liable or pulled into this because they weren't willing to help provide the information that you and even the state election board said they were looking for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And with the clerk now, this is really interesting because now they just added the clerk onto that lawsuit in the last day or two.
Oh, no,
So
I didn't see that. Wow.
Oh, yeah. So the clerk, because they didn't have any standing at all. I think we may have talked about this, government, they're making constitutional claims and government agencies don't have constitutional rights. And individuals in their official capacities don't really have constitutional rights either. But so they put they knew they didn't have any standing. So they tried to get the clerk on the case. She didn't want to go on because she's, a clerk is a neutral party. And she said this herself, but she went on the case anyway, at their insistence, obviously, and a lot of pressure. And now, as you said, now this implicates her in the cover-up, because now she's trying to hide the ballots from the voters of Georgia. And not only that, she went into court. You're not going to believe this one. You can't make this stuff up. She went into court in June of 2024 and saying that they wanted to destroy the ballots. And because they didn't have room for them. Yeah. So June of 2024, we have this hearing on my case. She goes into court and she says, we want to destroy the ballots because we don't have room for them. Now, this is after they have just bought they paid $30 million for that 660,000 square foot warehouse they have down in Fairburn, Georgia. Beautiful facility, nice facility. And it's empty. And so they're going into court with a straight face, telling the judge they don't have room for the ballots. They didn't want to destroy them. And the judge, even this judge, said, "Well, no, I've got other preservation orders on these ballots." So, so then after all that, then she turns around and goes onto this lawsuit, claiming that she is an aggrieved party after she said she wanted to destroy the ballots. So it's an absolute matter of court record that she wanted to destroy the ballots and she didn't need them. And now she goes on this court, and to get to your point, she's lying because she's not an aggrieved party. In order to be on that lawsuit, you've got to be an aggrieved party. So now you've got the clerk of the court dragged into this, along with the Board of Elections and the commission. I mean, all of Fulton County is now criminally complicit in this cover up of not producing the ballots for the voters of Georgia 5 years ago.
Yeah. And again, I think going into the search warrant and the affidavit, that may lead into and be a part of the FBI's case, in my mind, to show intent, right? Because if you've got all of these situations that are continuing to happen, someone simply asking or filing an open records request and showing pushback or being lied to, that was the biggest, again, and I'm not an attorney, I'm just someone looking at this affidavit with common sense, but that was the biggest issue for me, was showing the intent. And you're saying that you've seen intent on top of intent times 10 in these cases.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a no-brainer to show, that something really bad is wrong. I think you've got the best point, though. The fact that they would hide these from the voters for 5 years and make up every conceivable excuse and every lie on the book that they could think of, that does, to me, say criminal intent. And we haven't even gotten to any of the facts of what the FBI has either.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We walked through yesterday, and it's always great to have the, it's probably really, really good to look at the press conference on the Voter J events tab. But we walked through the 5 claims of the probable cause that they have.
Yes.
And one of them was, we were told that the counts all added up.
No.
And they don't. There's all kinds of mismatches and stuff. The governor even produced a report based on our evidence, thanks to a lot of the work that Joe Rossi did, and as well as David Cross. But he produced a report and sent it over to the state election board saying that this stuff doesn't add up. And we walked through how the original count, the recount, and the audit never matched up, and it didn't even match with the number of voters who voted out of the voter registration system.
Right.
It's not like they were off like half a dozen.
Thousands.
They were off tens of thousands, thousands of votes off. So that's one thing. Then there was the missing records you mentioned. There's already a criminal referral for that, for missing the tabulator tapes, or either they were missing or unsigned. Most of them were missing for 315,000 ballots, all the early voting, almost all of it.
Wow.
Except for 1 or 2 tapes. So those are already criminal referrals. So we already have evidence of probable cause in the public domain. So that's one thing. That's 2 things. Well, we talked about the counterfeit ballots. That's 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the double scan ballots. We know that 3,930 ballots were double scanned. We know that. I'm sorry, not just double scanned, but we know this from Philip Davis that they were also double counted. They tried to claim, well, they were double scanned. We don't know if they were double counted. Well, they're lying. Every image creates a cast vote record, and every cast vote record was certified. So they were not only double scanned, but they were double counted. And now you got the fact that the Secretary of State's legal counsel lied about it. So now she becomes criminally complicit in this. So that's more probable cause of criminal activity that they can investigate. And then finally, you got the most mysterious one of all, was how on December the 3rd, I guess it was the 2nd, the deadline for certification was December 2nd, the final certification.
Mm-hmm. And
Fulton was off 16 or 17,000 ballots in the batches. They had reported a 527,000 number, and they only had 511,000 ballots batched up in their batch report that were loaded. So where did the other 16,000 votes come from? Well, we don't know, but suddenly they appeared, the next day, and by December 4th, they had literally, it appears to have manufactured 16,000 votes. Now, we're yet to see what the excuse for that is, but again, that's certainly probable cause of a crime. So that's kind of the nutshell of the probable cause stuff that we talked about yesterday.
Well, I'm sure it's just a clerical error, right? It's 16,000 votes, not a big deal at all.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, especially with the FBI's investigation, because we saw some pretty major and it seems like simple explanations for what happened, especially even when it came down to the text in the files that were generated by the tabulator tapes in a lot of different instances. And I think one of the major things that wasn't talked about that you addressed was the mail-in ballot section of that, which we haven't heard a lot about as well. So can you kind of speak to, from an evidence standpoint, what you were seeing with the mail-in ballot specifically during that election?
Yeah, well, it was basically just exactly like what I was saying earlier, They weren't folded from being mailed. They weren't written with a writing instrument. They weren't on the correct paper stock. They were voted the same way, down ballot for dozens of a row. I was there the day that they found them. And so as with Susie Voiles and Barbara Hartman, I think they were originally found them, but we ended up with 6 sworn affidavits, 4 from senior poll managers and 2 audit monitors who all looked at it. And they brought this to the attention of Nadine Williams, who was now the current elections director. And they are saying that she said, there's no provision for how to handle counterfeit ballots, what to do. And she said, we just keep on counting.
Wow.
And that's what they did. So those ballots are still in the counts somewhere. We don't know how many, but there are, the FBI should be able to find a certain number of counterfeit ballots. And I think they're going to find out that Fulton is short by 16 or 17,000 ballots when they actually do the investigation. And it is a criminal investigation, of course.
Yeah, and it's interesting with that point. We've heard Brad Raffensperger double, triple, quadruple down on the accuracy of these recounts, the accuracy of the audit, the accuracy of the second recount after that. I'm having trouble seeing how he justifies that with, again, someone who's not an attorney and myself looking at this and seeing that there was just a major discrepancy throughout all 3 votes. I don't think, how do you justify that on that side?
Well, yeah. And here's what Brad's problem is. And it's not just him, it's other people. They know that they can go and make up any lie, and they know that the news media will print whatever lie that they come up with. They know that it will be broadcast. So they've got their sources, and that's what they do. I mean, the AJC has been a huge problem. Georgia Public Broadcasting has been a problem.
Yeah.
So so he relies on the fact that he knows that he can lie and get away with it. And that's it's not just him, it's politicians that do this all the time. So they will propagate whatever he says. Now the average person knows that 315,000 missing or unsigned tabulator tapes is not a clerical error.
No, but that's intentional.
I know. I mean, everybody, any average person can see that, but yet they will, he will propagate that lie. AJC will print it. Georgia Public Broadcasting might as well. We've had a lot of issues with them. And it'll go up to other places like MSNBC or, and they had a bunch of garbage on in the last day or two about this too.
Yeah.
So, and so he can get away with it, even though everybody, but people like you and me, almost the average Joe on the street knows that if they were told that, would know better. But that's why we need podcasts like ClassE to get the word out of what the actual truth is. So we appreciate y'all so much.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that you've been doing as well. I mean, getting a law change that significantly, and one could argue even helped get the FBI to the point they're at now, because that was, I want to go back to that too. That was the biggest thing for me, where I heard and I saw that the ballots were actually sealed, but you definitely gave me more information when it comes to how that process works, because I said, well, the FBI might be able to take them, but I don't know if the judge lifted that seal, because they might not be able to actually look at them, and Fulton County may be able to get those back. But you're saying now, not only with the new law passed, but with Rob Pitts basically misrepresenting his authority in this case, that they're going to be able to hold on to these, which is probably why it's been canceled tomorrow. Yeah,
exactly. And in fact, if we want to talk about the authority, this is kind of fascinating. I was actually on Bannon this morning to talking about this on the War Room. Yeah. And so the standing issue, first of all, they're making constitutional claims. They made the Fourth Amendment unreasonable search and seizure claim, and they're making a First Amendment claim. So the First Amendment claim is particularly an egregious lie because they're claiming now the FBI can link ballots and voters together.
Right.
Well, wait a minute. If that was true, then Fulton County has been violating the law, the Georgia ballot secrecy law for decades.
Yep.
But it's not true. It's a lie. You add a ballot, you can't link it to a voter. There's no way to know what voter voted that ballot. There's all sorts of procedures in place to ensure that there is no link between voters and ballots. So that's a lie. But the even more significant is that none of these government agencies, there's Fulton County, Fulton Board of Elections, Fulton Commission on this lawsuit. They don't have constitutional rights. Constitutional rights are for you and me, U.S. citizens.
Right.
So those claims were so ridiculous, and the judge didn't even pay attention to those claims when he produced this order today. So those are out. And then the other problem is Chairman Pitts and Clerk Alexander are on in their official capacities.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have any constitutional rights in their official capacities. So that's a whole nother thing. And then you have the whole issue that if they're on as their individual rights, they don't have if they're on as individuals, they still don't own the ballots. The ballots are not their personal possession. So they have this whole issue that they don't have any constitutional rights. So then that brings us to this 41G criminal procedure thing, which is the whole basis of the case.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so there's a 4-part test. I got a little note here I might have to read to make sure I get this right. So there's a 4-part test. Now, in order to get the ballots returned, they would have to meet, they being Fulton County, have to meet all 4 parts.
Okay.
So the first part says whether the government would have to have displayed a callous disregard for their constitutional rights. Well, first of all, they didn't have any constitutional rights in this case.
Exactly.
Because they really don't have any standing. And second of all, the government got a normal search warrant the way they normally do, and that's not a callous disregard for constitutional rights. So they fail on the first test that they had to make. The second test is that whether the plaintiff has an individual interest in and a need for the material whose return he seeks. Well, they don't have an individual interest because they're not, none of the plaintiffs on the case are individuals. So they have no individual interest, and they don't have any need for the material because it's just sitting in the warehouse sealed up and it's used. So they fail again on 2 points on the second point, the second test. Then the third one says whether the plaintiff would be irreparably injured by denial of the return of the property. Well, they're not irreparably injured because, as we just talked about earlier, the clerk went in to the court and said she wanted to destroy the ballots. So how can they be irreparably injured
if it's
from
trash?
Something? If it was, if it was trash. Yeah. So if the FBI wants their trash,
yeah, exactly.
How would they be irreparably injured? I'm going to remember that. I'm going to use that on some other shows. That is funny. Yeah. So they're not irreparably injured. And then the fourth test is whether the plaintiff has an adequate remedy at law for the redress of their grievance. Well, the problem with that is you've got to be an aggrieved party according to the criminal procedure, and they've got to show that they were aggrieved. So how were they aggrieved in this whole matter by having the FBI conduct a criminal investigation? Them having the ballots, there's no way that they are aggrieved from this whole thing. They can't establish that. So they can't establish any one of the four parts that they would have to establish in order to have a case in the first place. The only way they could be irreparably harmed or aggrieved is if the FBI finds out that they have in fact committed crimes. And I don't think that's what the statute was meant to do. So
absolutely,
that's kind of the background of their trash that they want to keep.
Yeah, and again, we've seen, even to that point, we've seen so much posturing, not only by election officials, Rob Pitts, Brad Raffensperger, but we've just heard outright blatant lies about what happened during 2020, and even the work that you and the FBI have been doing on this case. But specifically, we've heard Rob Pitts and several election officials say that they feel like this is, again, a violation of the constitutional rights, which you've addressed, and also a threat on democracy. And I wanted to ask you about this. When you hear those things, when you hear that type of narrative being said, I know you've spoken to the news printing it, so they have to say it. But in your mind, what does that make you feel about what's actually behind the scenes of what happened during the 2020 election and elections we've seen in the past?
Well, first of all, it makes me feel I need a shovel.
Yeah.
I have to dig myself out of all the crap that is being spewed out. So that would be probably number one. But number two is, I mean, we've known for some time that the ballots will not support the results that they certified. And I think that's really the problem. They know that, we know that, we know they know that, and they know we know that.
Yes.
And that is why, I mean, they are making every last ditch effort they can. And what's interesting about this, Eric, is in addition to all that, this is no longer just about Fulton County, because they got these two guys coming down, Abby Lowell and Norm Eisen,
yes,
to represent them. So what this is telling me now is that this is not just something that happened in Fulton County. This is a national conspiracy of some kind apparently, that Democrats apparently have been cheating across the country. Because why would these two DC lawyers come down and want to be involved in a case and that they really can't win? I mean, it's like a last desperate shot to try to stop the FBI from basically, or really the DOJ from basically filing criminal complaints against the people who did the cheating. So why would they be interested in stopping that if they were not involved in the cheating?
Yes. That's a great point. And I want to ask you another question based off of that as well. Someone had a great point in the chat. They were talking about surrounding, not even going outside of Georgia, just DeKalb County, other counties in Georgia. I know you've seen a lot of information here in Fulton County, and we even heard during the Georgia Election Board's meeting from other counties. What are you specifically seeing from other counties just in Georgia as far as the issues they've been having with their elections, maybe closely related to what's happening in Fulton County?
Yeah, so good question. So other counties have problems. Yeah. Let's say, for example, that we found when we did a survey that 1.7 million of the original 5 million ballot images for the 2020 election were destroyed in violation of federal and state law. They were not preserved as they were required for the 2-year requirement period. So other counties have had serious problems. In fact, we're actually in court on one of these issues right now with another county. But overall, I think you could put all of the probably could put all of the other counties in one bucket and not come up with the number and the seriousness of violations that have occurred in Fulton County alone. And that's just even if you just limit it to the 2020 election. It's that bad.
Wow. Yeah, I guess we need to get some clerical error t-shirts going. I mean, if I make it happen, I'll have to send you one, because just hearing about this, and then people even from other states, you know, Arizona, talking about Minnesota as well, as we've heard in the news a lot. It seems like this was a widespread issue in 2020 and beyond and in the past. So that's amazing to hear that it's that rampant.
Yeah, so either that, maybe that could be on one side, and then the other side, it could be Fulton County, we want our trash back.
There you go. Oh, that's amazing. Well, Garland, I know you've given us so much of your time today, and I appreciate the great conversation. We've got the link to your press conference from yesterday in the chat, and we'll also drop it in the description as well. I know you've got some other things coming up. Is there anything or any final thoughts you wanted to mention before we let you go?
Well, I do want everybody to know, since we might have some new viewers out there, that we are a we are a nonpartisan organization, 501c3, and the most important thing I think to understand is that we are volunteers.
Yeah.
So my wife and I are retired. We do this full time. We don't take salaries. You know, we have some administrative costs, but any donations that are sent are tax deductible, and almost all of it goes right into legal fees, which are pretty expensive, because we've got not only this battle, but we also have another battle you're going to be hearing about in the very near future to vacate Dominion voting system certification, because it was never legitimately certified. And that's a whole nother story for another show, but it'll be fascinating. You should be hearing more about that in the coming couple of weeks.
I look forward to it, and I appreciate you again. I did have one final question I wanted to ask you. It's a tough one, but I think you can handle it. If you were to do a one-on-one sit down with someone at the state elections board, what's one question that you would have to ask them, or one thing you would ask them for if you could do that?
If I could do that, I would have a one-on-one sit down with Chairman John Favirito, who just was on the show. He was on some GPB show the other day, claiming that Fulton County is completely different now than what they were in 2020, even though the elections director was there in 2020 at the hand count audit today.
Yes.
But I would have a one-on-one sit down with him, and I just simply ask him one question. Why have you done every conceivable thing within your power to cover up for Fulton County during the last 2 years since you've been on the board?
Amazing. That's a great question. I'll definitely have to hold on to that one. Garland, I appreciate you so much. Thank you again for your time. We got to do this again soon, and I appreciate the work you're doing here in Fulton County. We're definitely going to continue to support you as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you. All right, guys. Amazing for Garland to stop by the show. We got to get him. We got to get him back on again. He does such an amazing job, not only of explaining what's going on here in Fulton County, but helping understand the importance of, wherever you are, getting involved in your local elections. Because as we've seen, so many little things can take place. So many clerical errors can happen. And then you can end up being at the place where we are here in Fulton County and realizing, wow, my county has been a mess for decades upon decades. So again, make sure you guys go and check out what Garland Favorito is doing over there at voterga.org. The link is in the description. We also dropped it in the chat for y'all. And thank you again, Garland, for stopping by the show. Amazing conversation. We're going to have him back again, because that he's out here working, not taking a day off. I want to see what you guys are saying in the chat, because y'all had some great thoughts. The same clerk of court that leaked the indictment of Trump to the media. Oh, Fulton County loves leaking stuff. Y'all remember, even with Young Thug, we saw some of his jail calls get leaked, which was absolutely egregious and is wild as well. Let me go ahead and actually see a couple more comments, and I gotta look at this note here as well. Also, while we're talking about interviews, I didn't tell Garland this, so I kind of snuck this question in there. That last question I asked him. The reason I asked him that question is because next week, I want all you guys to know why we're here. We are going to have someone from the Georgia Board of Elections, this Georgia State Board of Elections, on the show. We are going to have Janelle King on the show next week. So make sure you guys stop by the show. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Super excited to have Janelle on the show. If you guys haven't seen one of the opening statements Janelle King did during last week's board meeting, please go make sure you check out and watch the video we did on that. I'll have to put it in the description for you. Janelle doing so much work here in Fulton County, doing some great work on the Georgia Elections Board as well. And she's got a lot of other stuff going on that we're going to address in the interview when she comes on the show next week. So make sure you guys stay tuned in for that. If you haven't yet, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss when we go live and do that interview or any of the other videos and content that we're doing as well. So shout out to Janelle. I'm so excited for that one. It's going to be a good time. So make sure y'all let everybody know that she's going to be on the show next week. Let me read some of these comments, and then we got to get to this Don Lemon topic. Y'all are saying that's so low to BS. It's exactly the same as it was in 2020. They just moved the pawns around the board. Man, and again, hey, listen, y'all know we keep it objective here. So we are going to have a lot of questions when it comes to what's going on with Georgia elections. And I know, specifically speaking to Mrs. King, that she's going to be open to having a great conversation too. So I'm excited for that one. Hundreds of people over 126 years old in Fulton County. That's a miracle. Yeah, that was hilarious by by the board member there, saying that people were born. There are still 200 plus people who are registered that were born in the year 1900. How does that happen, guys? I refuse to watch public broadcasting. It's full of lefties who manipulate the population and toe the Democratic line. Mainstream media is getting there too. 2020 election needs investigating too. Yeah, and again, if we're to keep it objective, we've seen issues from the other side as well. President Trump didn't, in my opinion, do everything right during the 2020 election either. So we can hold them accountable as well. We talked about, was it America PAC? Had some issues there too. Oh yeah. And thank you, Amy, for dropping the link in there. Janelle King actually has a YouTube channel as well. We'll talk about that during your interview. Look up the Harrison deal. Kemp's daughter's boyfriend that died in a fiery Ford Pinto style car crash 2 weeks after the 2020 election. Oh God, that's terrible. It's been a mess for 40 years, 50 years even. Sheesh. I believe it. What else are y'all saying? Ruby received the Medal of Freedom from Joe Biden. Nothing to see here. I mean, right in our faces. I couldn't believe that. Multiple judges, clerks of courts, state attorney general, local election board, local staff. This is a widespread criminal conspiracy. I mean, dang, they wanted to cover it up so bad, guys. They indicted the 45th president at the time of the United States. That's how bad they wanted this to go away. They said, "Oh, you making phone calls now? Rico, can't be doing that. You cannot ask questions. It's not allowed." Let's get into this Don Lemon topic, and then I'll let you guys get up out of here. Man, so much to cover today. And again, thank you to Garland Favorito. Y'all please go over there and check out Voter GA, see what they got going on, because he's doing some amazing work right here in Fulton County. And again, as we've heard in a negative way from a lot of those on the other side, it's impacting not only Fulton County, but the surrounding counties and will impact things on a nationwide scale as well. Hey, I think one of my lights went out actually. Let's go ahead and get into Don Lemon and see what we talking about here. This one, I'm not going to say it makes me happy because that would be weird, but I will say this. I'm glad the church members who were involved in this situation with Don Lemon and those group of people walking up into their church are finally pushing back, because now we're hearing reports that Don Lemon is being sued by one of the church members for emotional distress, as she should. We heard so many crazy stories that came out of this raid on this church. I won't call it a raid on this church, but Don Lemon and several others going into this church and disrupting it in the way that they did, violating these people's constitutional rights. Their rights to worship unbothered should be simple, should be pretty straightforward. And I think with this civil case, it's going to be an easy win for this woman, because Don Lemon, he was clearly a part of this. Again, guys, we can speak to a lot of these situations we see here, because I could be on the jury that sees this case. You could be on the jury that sees this case, and you would have to make a decision. And looking at just the simple video that Don Lemon posted of him walking around with Nikema, having a conversation about the operation that we were going on, this seems like a pretty straightforward win. Not to mention the fact that everything that happened as a result of this. But let's see what Amy had to say over on X. If you guys don't follow Amy on X, you are absolutely missing out. So please make sure you do that, because she's done a great job of reporting not only on this, but multiple other factors. She's even beat TMZ and many other mainstream media outlets by her excellent reporting. So make sure you go follow her at IAmyLeigh on X. That's at IAMYLEIGH on X. She says this: on February 24th, Ann Duche, I don't know how to say it, has filed a lawsuit against former CNN anchor Don Lemon and other protesters following a January 18, 2026 protest at the city's church in St. Paul, Minnesota. What happened? Allegations. Ann claims that Lemon and protesters unlawfully interfered with her ability to worship, which is true, causing severe emotional distress, fear, anxiety, and trauma. If Don Lemon's going to try and say he was worshiping too, like he told the pastor, get out of here, dude. You don't worship with a camera and a microphone in a pastor's face. Stop. This needs to go forward. And I think everybody in that church, all the kids, they need to file lawsuits too. Context: the protest was directed at a church pastor who also holds a position with the Minneapolis ICE. The pastor who they were going there to confront wasn't even at the church at the time. Claims against Don Lemon: the suit alleges that Lemon cooperated with the group, with one person reportedly aiding him in logistics and local contacts, and the claims that he seemed to take satisfaction in the disruption while recording it. Yeah, and he said, hey, this is what you got to do. You got to make people uncomfortable. I clearly remember this. Well, Don Lemon, of course, we know he pled not guilty to the criminal charges that came against him from the Department of Justice. We're going to hear from Don Lemon here, and then we're also going to get into an article from TMZ that gives a little bit more insight into what he could be facing with this civil lawsuit. Check this out.
Former CNN anchor turned independent journalist Don Lemon pleaded not guilty to federal charges in a Minnesota courtroom.
Lemon is one of 9 people charged in connection with a protest at a St. Paul church last month. The organizers said a pastor at that church was also a top local ICE official. Lemon has said he was covering the demonstration as a journalist and is not affiliated with the protesters. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa's following this one for us and joins us. Maggie, take us through what happened in court a short time ago and what's next for Don Lemon's case.
Yeah, guys, this is really striking. We expected this arraignment to go forward pretty quickly, and we expected Lemon to enter the plea that he did, which was not guilty. But his defense attorneys also got up and told the judge that they have a number of motions they plan to file, one of which tied to discovery. In this case, they said, quote, we have serious concerns, this is just moments ago, about the application of these statutes to our client, claiming their words that Don Lemon was trapped in Los Angeles when he was arrested here just a couple of weeks ago in the wake of this church protest. And they said that when he was arrested in LA, which was a couple of weeks after the protest, that his phone was taken and they were told the phone was being shipped to Minneapolis. His attorney's saying today, we still don't know where his phone is. Then a federal prosecutor got up and said, well, actually, we have the phone in DHS custody. We have a warrant to search it. And that search is not yet complete. So that was one kind of detail that his defense team zeroed in on. Remember, the backstory of this protest at a St. Paul church was that protesters wanted to alert congregants that one of the pastors there works for ICE. And Lemon, on his live stream, said that he knew about the plans ahead of time for the protest, that he wasn't going to disclose them ahead of time. He went into the church with the protesters, is now being charged.
It's open and shut.
With the exact same federal charges that 7 protesters face as well, guys. Federal prosecutors not delineating between protesters and journalists in that crowd at all.
And
yeah, I mean, I think he's cooked on this lawsuit. Could he avoid it? Possibly. I think he needs to go ahead and settle this one, because if this goes to a jury, it's going to be very open and shut. It's clear Don Lemon knew what was going down, and he was okay, and not only thought it was important for this to happen the way that it did.
Delineating,
get him out of there,
between protesters and journalists in that crowd at all.
And Maggie, we know 4 other people charged in connection to the church protest also appeared in court. Remind us about those cases.
Yeah, so those are 4 of the protesters, 9 people arrested total, 2 of them independent journalists, and Lemon is one of those 2. But we had basically 4 other protesters, including a woman named Nakima Levy-Johnson, who's a local civil rights attorney in Minneapolis. She was featured prominently. There she is. I spoke to her in the days after the church protest, and she told us simply that she and other protesters wanted to, again, let congregants know one of their pastors works for ICE. They claim this was peaceful. They claim they were protected by the First Amendment, as does Lemon. I should point out this court appearance is still going on as we speak. And we do actually have a live feed, if we can pull that up, outside the courtroom of the crowd that's gathered to support Lemon and the protesters. One final headline, guys, to bring it back to Lemon. One of his attorneys that he's hired is an, as of recently, former federal prosecutor who resigned from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota amidst what was reported widespread frustration in that office about the cases they were being leaned on to prosecute tied to ICE operations in Minnesota. So this has quickly become, as you can see, a bellwether case tied to the Trump administration's ICE operations in this city and more broadly as we wait for Lemon to leave today's arraignment there.
Yeah, again, Don Lemon's, I think he's cooked on this point. I think he should go ahead and settle this, because the biggest factor that we saw throughout this entire church situation was the word intimidation. Were they intimidated? I think it was clear to see their reaction that people were intimidated. Don Lemon had no right to be there with his cameras reporting on what was happening. The protesters, including Don Lemon, had no right to be in that church and violate those people's rights. TMZ has this to say. Don Lemon sued over Minnesota church protest. What happened? A woman who claims to have been attending the church service during the Minnesota church protest covered by Don Lemon last month is now suing Lemon and other protesters, saying she suffered severe emotional distress as a result of the incident. Guys, church is supposed to be a place where you can go and worship freely. We've heard of shootings. We've heard of situations that have taken place. Can you imagine the shock of these people sitting there worshiping, and a group randomly walks in, starts circling them, not allowing them to get back to their kids, putting cameras in their faces, yelling at them, screaming at the pastor? That's intimidating at a basic level. If this happened in church, I'm not going to lie, I'd probably be shaken a little bit by it. I don't know why we're having a conversation about this. Either way, in court documents obtained by TMZ, Ann Duche claims that she was attending a worship service at City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota on January 18th, when she alleges Don and others unlawfully interfered with her ability to freely exercise her religion in a private place of worship. Remember, the demonstration was held in the wake of Renee Good's death and was meant to confront the city's church pastor, David Easterwood, who was a Minneapolis ICE official and wasn't even there that day. Duche is suing for an unspecified amount, claiming she suffered severe emotional distress, fear, anxiety, and trauma as a result of the protesters' conduct. I mean, if you go to church, you're going to be looking around like, man, is somebody coming in here today? Duche claims that Don acted with the group of protesters. He clearly did. And one protester admitted on social media to assisting Don with logistics and local contacts in support of the operation. According to the papers, Don appeared to take satisfaction in the disruption as he live streamed portion of the event. As TMZ reported, Lemon insists he was simply exercising his First Amendment right as a reporter to document the church demonstration. Nope. Shining a light on this event as a journalist and later vowing not to be silenced. Don Lemon was arrested on January 29th and charged with 1 count of conspiracy against the right of religious freedom at a place of worship and 1 count of injuring, intimidating, and interfering with the exercise of right of religious freedom at a place of worship. I agree. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. We've reached out to Lemon for comment on the lawsuit. So far, no word back. He needs to go ahead and settle this, whatever it takes, Don Lemon. And you're going to see about 11 more of these. So you better get ready. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe he'll file for bankruptcy. But a lot of people at this church need to follow suit, pun intended, because what happened here, Don Lemon has to be made an example of, and promoting it and encouraging it and saying he had a right to do it is just wrong on the basic level. And I think we can all appreciate that for the most part. Let me know what you guys think in the comments and in the chat. Thank you again to everybody who's in here. I appreciate y'all's love and support today. Big shout out to Garland Favorito for stopping by the show. Again, y'all make sure you go over to voterga.org and you can go to /events to check out his recent press conference he had yesterday. You can go /donate to actually support what he's doing, the work he's doing here in Fulton County and across the nation. And go show him some love. He's doing some great work and I love having him on the show. We'll definitely have him back soon. Also, next week, we are going to have Georgia State Election Board member Janelle King on the show. I'm so excited about this interview. It's going to be a good time. You guys make sure you get your questions ready. And of course, I'll remind you when that's happening next week as well. Thank y'all for the love. Big shout out to everyone who liked the video and went the extra mile. Thank you to my guy, Jason, for dropping the 15 bomb super chat. And of course, shout out to my beautiful, awesome, amazing Amy E. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. If you haven't yet, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any time that we go live or drop a new video. And of course, y'all know what to do. Keep growing, keep pushing, keep it classy. We go. Peace. Thank y'all.